Do you know why so many people abandon a strategy even when it supposedly works? Because they execute it blindly. The real difference between trading with anxiety and trading with calm is having the numbers clear. How many trades you take, how many days you trade, your win rate, your profit factor, your average gain and loss, your maximum drawdown, and your losing and winning streaks. When you understand those numbers, you understand exactly what you're doing. The problem is that backtesting is usually torture. Opening spreadsheets, copying trade by trade, making mistakes with data, wasting hours, and when you want to adjust a single rule, you have to start from scratch. That's why BACKTESTER Manual Pro exists. This is a tool you use directly on the NinjaTrader 8 chart. You only need to draw your trades with the risk-reward tool, and the system will deliver the statistics automatically. It also allows you, after doing your backtesting, to change parameters of your trades to study how they would affect the statistics. For example, you can modify the target ratio, define a maximum trading hour, modify the stop-loss distance, set a fixed or variable number of contracts per trade, and even activate a trailing stop-loss for each trade. When applying changes, the trades get new results, and the tool generates new statistics. Also, you'll be able to export the data directly to Bruno Meza's trading journal to get the full record of trades in a more organized and detailed way. With the journal, you can filter the information precisely and study it in a much more dynamic and visual way. Now yes, let's start with the practical part of how to use the BACKTESTER Manual Pro tool. The tool is very simple to use. First, go to a chart in the time frame in which you execute your trades and in which you want to do the backtesting. Within that chart, right-click and then select the Indicators option. Then look for the indicator called BACKTESTER Manual Pro Toolbox and add it only once to the chart. Finally, when it loads, you will see a simple interface with three main buttons: New, Load, and Save. To begin backtesting, it is first necessary to create a work session. To do so, use the New button and assign a name to your work session. It is important to understand that this session will be saved associated with the type of chart where you are creating it. In other words, if you create the session on a 1-minute chart, that session can only be used on 1-minute charts. If later you wanted to test a strategy on a 2-minute chart, you will need to create a different session. Once the session is created, two more buttons will be enabled: the pencil and the gear. The gear is the button that allows you to perform actions on the session you are working on. For example, it allows you to duplicate the session to save a backup copy, rename the session, delete the session, or quickly remove all the risk-reward tools you have drawn in the session. The pencil, on the other hand, is the button that allows you to draw the risk-reward tools that will let you record each trade of your backtesting. However, before filling the chart with trades, it is convenient to configure two details: the trade types and the logic that each trade type will have. To do so, you must go to the lower part of the tool and click the General Configuration button. Inside the window, you will see several tabs. The first tab is called Colors and Design. This tab allows you to adjust the visual appearance of the tool: colors, lines, line types, etc. You can explore it calmly later. For the functional part, which is what really matters, we have two tabs called Trade Types and Trade Configuration. In the Trade Types tab, you define the names of the trade types that exist in your strategy. To do so, you must type the name and then press the Add button. For this example, I will add two trade types: Breakout Trade and Reversal Trade. Once the types are created, you must go to the Trade Configuration tab. Here we will provide the initial properties for each trade type that you can later modify to study the behavior of the statistics under different parameters. To configure the trade types, you must first choose the trade type you want to edit. When you select it, you will start seeing the specific properties for that type, and what you configure there will only affect that trade type. This is useful because in a strategy you don't always manage all entry types the same way. Perhaps a breakout is managed differently than a reversal, and here you can set that. The system also handles a trade type called No Type. This is the default trade type that will be set if you don't choose a specific trade type for any plotted trade. You can provide default properties to no type if you are interested in using it as a general category. Each trade type has parameters you can modify individually. Let's start with the first parameter called target ratio. The target ratio is the relationship that defines how far your target will be relative to your stop loss for that trade type. For example, if your stop loss is placed at a distance x from the entry and your ratio is set to 2, then the target will be placed at a distance of 2 times the stop loss distance. The second parameter is the time limit. This parameter defines the time at which this trade type will automatically close its positions if the trade is still open when that time is reached. An important detail is that the trade will close at the open or at the close of the bar, depending on which of those is closer to the time limit you set. Remember that the time must be specified in New York time. The third available parameter is the stop loss distance. This parameter defines the distance the stop loss will have for each trade that uses this trade type. There are 2 types of stop loss distance: the flexible distance, also known as structure-based distance, and the fixed distance. With the flexible or structure-based distance, you decide where you want to place the stop loss on the chart, according to market structure, and it can be different for each trade. That is, the stop loss distance is not fixed for all trades, but depends on where you set it on the chart for each one. On the other hand, with the fixed distance, the stop loss becomes standard for all trades of that type. That is, you define a fixed distance, and the tool will place that same distance for all trades of this type. The fourth available parameter is risk and contracts management. This parameter defines how many contracts each trade of that type will have, and therefore will affect its profit or loss. The tool gives you 3 risk and contracts management options, so you can choose the one that best fits your trading. The first option is global fixed contracts. With this option, you simply choose a fixed number of contracts, and all trades of that trade type will always use that same amount. The second option is called risk-based contracts, and is ideal if your way of managing risk consists of always risking the same amount of money on each trade, regardless of how far your stop loss is. The idea is simple. In some trades your stop can be very close, and in others it can be farther away. If you always traded with the same number of contracts, then the money you risk would change a lot from one trade to another. With this option, the tool automatically adjusts the number of contracts, so that the dollar risk stays as similar as possible in each trade. To use it, you must first define the risk value in dollars. That value is simply how much money you are willing to lose if the stop loss is hit. For example, if you define $200, the tool takes that amount and calculates how many contracts it should place on that trade, so that, if price touches your stop, the loss is approximately those $200. If the stop is closer, more contracts will usually be needed to reach that same risk. If the stop is farther, fewer contracts will usually be needed. Additionally, you can define the maximum contracts limit, which works as a safety cap. This means that, if to reach the risk you configured, the tool calculates that it should enter with more contracts than allowed, then it won't place them. Instead, it will place only the maximum you defined. The consequence is that on that trade, you would no longer be risking exactly the amount of your risk value, but a smaller amount, because the limit prevents increasing the contracts further. On the other hand, you can also define the rounding rule. The rounding rule is a setting that allows you to decide when the tool should round up to the next contract and when it should round down to the previous contract, when the calculation gives you a number with decimals. Think that the tool first calculates an ideal number of contracts to meet your risk objective. But since in practice you can't trade 3.6 contracts, the tool needs to convert that number into an integer, 3 or 4. That's where the rounding rule comes in. If the decimal part of the calculation is equal to or greater than the rule, the tool rounds up. If the decimal is less than the rule, it rounds down. For example, if to risk $200, the tool calculates 3.6 contracts, the decimal is 0.6. If your rule is 0.5, since 0.6 is greater than 0.5, then the tool goes up to 4 contracts. Lastly, if you enable the option Show Estimated P&L, or the tool will show you the real profit and loss you would make or lose by entering the trade with the number of contracts calculated for the trade. The third option is manual contracts per tool. This parameter gets the number of contracts for each trade from the tool's properties. That is, you decide manually how many contracts to place on each trade. You must set the number of contracts for each trade in the individual settings of each of the tools. The fifth parameter is called stop-loss trailing and defines how your stop-loss should move while the trade progresses. The idea is that the stop does not stay fixed, but can be adjusted at certain moments to better protect the trade as price approaches the objective. This trailing is configured using steps, as if they were levels that get activated during the trade. And each step has two values. The first is the percentage of progress, which represents how far the price must move from your entry toward the target. The second is the percentage of stop-loss placement, which defines at what level you want the stop to move when that progress is reached. It works like this. Imagine the distance between your entry point and your target as a complete journey, from 0 to 100%. When the price advances and reaches the percentage you defined in a step, then the tool will adjust the stop-loss and move it to the placement you configured for that same step. For example, if in a step you indicate that when it reaches 50% of the journey, you want the stop to be at 20%, then when the price reaches that 50%, the stop will move to that area. If you want the stop to keep moving up as the price advances further, you simply add another step with a higher percentage of progress and a new stop placement. This is how you create a staircase of adjustments. As the trade progresses, the stop is repositioned at the levels you defined. And something very important, the tool does not evaluate these steps in the middle of the candle, but at candle close. That means each step is considered fulfilled only when the bar finishes and closes, and only then is the stop-loss movement applied. Once you have your trade types configured, then you are ready to start doing your backtesting. Backtesting can be done in many ways, but the most common way is the following. First, connect a real-time data feed inside NinjaTrader. Real-time data is necessary to obtain the historical data correctly. This data feed can be from an active funding company or a broker. If you have neither, you can create a 14-day trial account with real data in NinjaTrader. In the description, we show you how you can create that account and get real-time data for free. Then, open a chart of the instrument in which you would enter trades. Next, right-click on the chart and go to the Data Series option. Look for the Days to Load option and set the number of days you want to backtest. Remember that the more days of backtesting you do, the larger your sample will be to obtain better statistics. Then wait for your chart to load the days. If for some reason your chart does not load, then it is likely that you do not have a data feed connected correctly. In that case, please connect a valid data feed and try again. Once you have the chart loaded, verify that you have the BACKTESTER Manual Pro tool on the chart. If you do not have it, please place the tool on the chart as shown earlier. Then, create or open a work session. If you already have a session created and want to use it, then press the Load button and choose the session to use. If you still don't have a session, or if you want to start a new one, press the New button. Assign it a name and start working. When you are already inside a work session, go to the first day of the history you want to analyze. One way to go directly to the desired day without having to look for it is to go to the lower horizontal scroll and click the Go To button. Here we can enter the day we want to go to quickly. Finally, you must go day by day, drawing the trades you would have entered according to your trading plan. Remember that to draw your trades you must click the pencil button and draw your trade on the chart. To plot your trade correctly, you must, first, choose the bar in which your trade will enter. Second, click on the exact entry price of the trade. Third, choose the point where your stop-loss should be. And fourth, assign the trade type that corresponds to it, so that it gets its characteristics. As you plot your trades day by day, the statistics can be seen immediately in the Backtest Statistics panel. If you want to apply filters to the statistics, you can do so through the Filters button located on the right side of the Backtest Statistics window. As of the recording date of this video, we have the following filters available. The first filter corresponds to the trade types filter. You can view the statistics corresponding only to certain trade types you choose from the list. The second filter corresponds to the trading hours filter. You can filter a start time and an end time of the day to consider only the trades between those times. Additionally, if there are statistics that are not important to you, then you can remove them from the Backtest Statistics panel, from the Global Configuration window in the tab called Statistics. Whenever you make an important change, please save the session using the Save button so that all the tools and changes are stored. The Save button is not optional. If you don't save, your work can be lost. If the next day you want to resume your backtesting session exactly where you left off, you must use the Load button. Then choose the backtesting session you want to continue, and automatically all the tools will load again along with their statistics. Now, the most interesting thing is the following. You already have the statistics from your backtesting, but what happens if I wanted to experiment with how the statistics would change by changing some parameter of my trade types? That's where BACKTESTER Manual Pro becomes truly powerful, because it allows you to adjust the parameters of your trade types even if you already started your backtesting. Instead of stopping and starting from scratch, you can change key variables and immediately see how they are reflected in your statistics. For example, you can modify the ratio, extend your maximum trading hour, adjust the stop loss, or decide whether or not to apply a trailing stop loss. By making these changes, you are not testing ideas at random, but comparing scenarios using the same set of trades. This makes the analysis much more reliable, because you are evaluating the results with the same trades, and the effect you observe is due solely to the parameter you changed. And when you work like that, the way you trade also changes. You trade with more discipline because you know what to expect. You tolerate streaks better because you understand they are part of the model, and you make decisions based on evidence instead of intuition. Finally, a very interesting feature is that once you finish your backtesting, you can export it to our trading journal. To not extend ourselves too much in this video, we will now only explain the export process, and we will quickly see what you can do inside the journal. If you want to see it in more depth, please watch the trading journal video you will find on the website. To export, you simply need to have a specific session loaded and saved that you want to export. Then, click the Export to Trading Journal button. Immediately, a window will open in which you will be asked to enter the username and password for the trading journal. To find the username and password, go to brunomeza.com and then to the Client Area button at the top. Then, log into your client area and access the Trading Journal button in the left side menu. If you had never used the journal, you will see a Start button. If you had already used the journal, then you can skip that window. Finally, your keys will be at the top within the Add-on Credentials section. Copy the username and password into the tool fields and click the Send button. Then, wait for the process to finish and you will receive a confirmation message. Finally, you refresh the Trading Journal page, and you will see in the Account selector a new account that represents your exported backtesting. It will always start with the name Backtest X, where X is the name of your session. Here, you will be able to view all your backtesting in a dynamic and visual way. You will be able to add notes, filter in a better way, and continue studying your backtesting more professionally. It is likely that, by the date you watch this video, the Trading Journal will have even more features. I hope this product is of great use to traders who want to take their trading to a more professional level. Any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments and we will gladly review them.